If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please subscribe now. Click the bell icon next to it and select All to ensure you don't miss any of my latest videos. The Mount Everest area has more mysteries than the number of mountains there. Mount Everest is one of the many mysterious places on Earth. In this Mount Everest, what we see is only the mountains and the atmosphere around it, but those who try to climb Mount Everest see many mysteries. Once, in June 1933, a person named Frank Smith was climbing Mount Everest from the north ridge of Mount Everest. He was climbing it alone. At that time, he saw something that surprised him a lot, and not only that, he made him mention it in his book or in his records. At that time, he was at an altitude of 28,200 feet. At that time, even breathing was an achievement for him because the oxygen levels there are very low. Otherwise, this was nothing new for Frank. He had climbed many mountains many times before. He is a famous mountain. He has done many daring expeditions. As part of that, he had also seen Mount Everest. But at that time, he stopped at one place and looked around. He noticed an amazing thing, and after seeing it, he could not believe his eyes. In fact, no one else could explain it. For what he said, what he saw, there were two strange dark objects. They were both floating in the air. They were completely black. But they were pulsing. Just like our hearts are beating, they are also pulsing. They seem to be alive. It is as if they are some kind of object. Frank was very surprised to see them behaving like some kind of living organism, a living being. Basically, he was very interested in detailed observations, and he would immediately write down what he saw in his notebook. He also wrote about it in great detail at that time. In fact, he mentioned very clearly where the objects were and in what position they were seen exactly. He also mentioned in great detail about their shapes. Those balloons look like an egg shape, but they are not very fat, and there are some glowing objects in front of them like eyes, and the back part looks like wings, but he does not understand whether they are wings or not. He mentioned that there is a lot of fatigue there, and oxygen deprivation is also very high. But even at that time, he did not notice all these details. He also mentioned the names of the surrounding mountains. Why did he note all those details? Basically, he could not tell the exact location and numbers because he did not have the right equipment. So, if the list mentioned the names of those mountains, or if he said that this was seen in the middle of them, then he mentioned it with the intention of making everyone clear about that location. You can see that he watched them for a long time. They did not move from the sky at all. No matter how much wind it blew, they stood stable in the air without breaking. But another thing he noticed at that time was that their pulsations were very slow. Even their pulsations were slower than his own heartbeat. So some kind of lifelike motion was seen very clearly in them. He wrote in his notebook. But what is an optical illusion? Basically, when climbing big mountains, the notorious hypoxia is created. So due to that, optical illusions are created on a very large scale. An illusion is created like that. Or some mysterious alien objects. So this is an alien mystery that no one has ever seen on Earth, the biggest alien mystery hidden only in the snow of Everest. No one understands anything about it. Some people believe that maybe Frank lied. Born in 1900, Frank already had a very big reputation. He was one of Britain's finest mountaineers. He made many daring attempts in that area. So if such a person had already undertaken many expeditions in the Himalayas before, now if he said this about Mount Everest, then it would definitely not be a lie. However, many people started to believe strongly. In fact, he was not only a well-known author, but also a botanist. So keeping in mind his adventures, he wrote about 30 books, all of which were very popular. He also mentioned this entire Mount Everest experience very clearly in a book called Camp 6. But they all said that they were all hallucinations caused by altitude sickness. A doctor named Mike Ward also went on an Everest expedition in 1953, and he also said that I also saw a little bit of that. When I looked up, I couldn't see anything again. So I also had hypoxia. Attitude sickness was created. That's why I saw things like that. So whatever Frank saw before, he said that they were also caused by hypoxia and attitude sickness. But even until his death, Frank kept saying that the objects or creatures he saw were real. And by the time he came down from Mount Everest, those objects had completely disappeared. No one knows what happened to them. And no one knows whether what he said was true or not, but given his name, it is unlikely that he is lying, but many people strongly believe that what he said is true. But what did he see so far? No one has an answer to this. However, there is another mystery that remains unanswered. The last Soviet expedition around Mount Everest. It was the winter of 1952. It was very cold. Basically, the whole of Russia was already snowing heavily in that area. So normally the temperatures are very low, and they are even worse in winter. But at that time they wanted to undertake an expedition. The Soviet Union wanted to undertake that expedition to Mount Everest because a kind of Cold War was going on. Could be the British or the Swiss. They were claiming their own race in the world's highest peak. So they also wanted to show their superiority. For that, they prepared a team of 35 climbers. They appointed a man named Dr. Pavel Deutsch as the leader. He had undertaken many expeditions in the Mount Everest area before that. That is why they appointed him. Their main goal was to go to Mount Everest and put up Lenin and Stalin statues there. By doing so, their dominance would be known to the whole world, and it would also help them politically. They wanted to undertake that expedition. They gave training to all of them for a month. Near Mount Lenin, it was the highest peak in the USSR. They gave all the training in that area and sent them to the Himalayas to climb Mount Everest. They sent very innovative technology with them. They gave them very good equipment and good clothing. They gave them self-heating clothes so that they would not get cold in any situation. They also gave them leather jackets. They were given boots. There are nails on the bottom of those boots. So they gave them that kind of shoes so that they wouldn't skid anywhere. They also gave them oxygen apparatus at a very high level. So they did that to prevent them from having problems like oxygen deprivation under any circumstances. So it must be said that the technology given to the Soviet people was more advanced than the Western technology at that time. So in October 1952, the expedition reached the Tibetan side of Everest. They reached their base camp. From there, they sent the Tibetan porters back and took their luggage from there and started climbing Mount Everest because no one should know about it. Even if they did know, they shouldn't have any help from others. It should be in their success alone. So they sent all of them from that area and started climbing the mountain themselves. And according to scattered radio transmissions, the team also reached Camp 8 for some time. They reached an altitude of 27,000 feet and then set off for the final ascent. But after 2 days of setting off, it became completely silent. That year was over. When they did not return, a search effort was first launched for 18 days. But not a single one of the climbers was found. No one knew what had happened to them, whether the mountain had completely swallowed them. But when they did not return, another investigation was launched a few years later. But even in that, nothing was found of their whereabouts. Here, the Moscow authorities did not even open their mouths about it. When their family members came out to talk, they dismissed it as not true. They said it was all lies because it was known that 35 Russian climbers had gone to Mount Everest and died. Because it would be a loss of reputation, they didn't want to tell anyone about it, so the project was completely classified. But a few years later, a well-known Soviet mountaineer named Ingrain wanted to find out the truth behind it. For that, he searched through many archives, checked many mountaineering journals, and interviewed many people. But no one knew anything about it. No matter how hard he tried, no one knew what happened to them. No records or photographs of them have come out. Why, no names of the climbers have come out. Even their family members have not been known. No one knows what happened to their family members. In fact, the expedition never happened. All the records have been deleted. So, after searching for years, he finally put it aside completely, not because of him. But there was another person. His name was Tenzing Norgay. Who is this? One of the starting conquerors of the expedition said that his uncle had seen some Russians climbing Mount Everest in 1952, but he could not submit any proper evidence for it. There was no proper proof, so it remained an unconfirmed story. And another 30 years later, two men named Edward Movey and Vladimir Balban finally planted the Soviet flag on Mount Everest and climbed Mount Everest in 1982, becoming the first Russians to climb Mount Everest completely. So after that, this story disappeared completely. Who even stopped caring about it? And what happened is only known to the officers who conducted it at that time. But they would not have told anyone about it, right? That's clear. So that's it. Guys, have you seen these are the two biggest mysteries related to Mount Everest? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to be notified of future uploads. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.